It's time to make it, just give it a try. 'Cause you can make it like the old fat guy.
Welcome to this edition of You Can Make It. I'm David Farrell. Today I'm going to make a really great appetizer for barbecues, Christmas time, anytime, sausage balls. They're a riff on an old recipe from a biscuit mix company that used to just mix sausage with their biscuit mix and make an appetizer. It wasn't very good. This is really tasty, and you'll see why when you see the ingredients that go into it. There's a lot of flavor in these little appetizers. What we have here is 170 milliliters or 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour, 1 milliliter or 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 milliliter or 1/8 teaspoon of pepper, 1 milliliter or 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne, and 4 teaspoons of baking powder. In addition to those ingredients, we have the sausage and the cheeses and whatever, but we're going to add some butter. There's 25 milliliters or 2 tablespoons of butter. There's 50 milliliters or 1/4 cup of milk, 1 teaspoon or 5 milliliters of lemon juice, and we have here 100 grams of cheddar cheese shredded up, 300 grams of breakfast sausage meat. You can buy it in bulk or you can take breakfast sausages and squeeze it out, and 75 milliliters or 1/3 of a cup of onions. So 100 grams is about 1/4 of a pound, and 300 grams is about 3/4 of a pound. So those are the ingredients we'll be putting into our sausage balls. We'll start off by mixing the dry ingredients together. We'll just put them all in a bowl. And we'll stir them together. Give them a good mix up to get a good blend. So you can see that there's not a lot of seasonings in there and there's not a lot of flour. It's going to mostly be flavored and textured by the sausage and the cheese. So that's all there is to that. Once you've put the dry ingredients together, you want to take your butter, which should be cold, and just break it up into a couple of chunks in the flour. And use a pastry blender or 2 knives to just cut it into little pieces. You want to keep pushing it out, and the idea is you want to make it so there's no pieces bigger than about a small pea. You can even go to cornmeal texture if you wish to. So just keep mixing it and pushing the butter through the pastry blender until you get that sort of mealy texture with no big pieces of butter. That's all it takes right there. You can see how it's kind of like a cornmeal mixture or flaky sort of mixture. So once you've got them mixed together, we want to add some liquid ingredients to it. And what I have here is my 50 milliliters of milk and my teaspoon of lemon juice, and we'll just mix those together. You need the sour because it curdles the milk a bit and gives a better texture to your biscuit mix. And we're just going to put that in to the center and slowly mix the flour into that mixture. Now you don't need to get it to be totally mixed. You just want it to start to come together just in a raggedy dough like you see there. And that, believe it or not, is just perfect. So what we're going to do now is put the sausage meat and the cheese and the onion into the bowl. And for the next part, the best tool to use, you hope you washed your hands well, because we're going to mix this together by hand. Now the way I like to do it is to take about half of it and put it on top of the other half and press down. And if you do that 10 or 12 times, it'll form a uniform mass. See, I just give it a quarter of turn between each press, and that gets the better mixture. Sort of like when you were a kid making mud pies. Okay, so now that you see it's kind of all the same through with a nice mixture, all you have to do is put them on to a baking tray. And you want to form them into balls about the size of small walnuts. When you're doing this, you'll note that these don't brown up like biscuits. Remember, they're mostly sausage. I baked my sausage balls for 22 minutes, and just to make sure, because you want to make sure there's no bacteria or anything still alive, I checked them with an instant read thermometer to make sure that they're over 160 degrees Fahrenheit. After 22 minutes they should be, and they definitely were. So now I let them cool on this tray just for 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll put them on a plate to serve them. And they do tend to just crisp on a little bit, fair to warn you. Now, I make these in the oven. You can also put them in a hot smoker at about 400 degrees or in a gas barbecue over indirect heat for 22 minutes. Just want to get that internal temperature up. The thing about these are you can serve them with some sweet and sour sauce or a barbecue sauce if you like, but I find it's got great flavor just on its own, and I'm going to try one. Great sausage flavor. You get the onion giving it a little bit. The cheese makes it taste almost like a lunch dish. The great part is there's just the right amount of biscuit mix to make it not just a greasy sausage ball. It's actually a tasty appetizer. I'm going to finish this. Definitely a great appetizer, and of course, you can make it.
In this segment, David prepared sausage balls. The ingredients used were 170 milliliters of flour, 1 milliliter of salt, half a milliliter of pepper, 1 pinch of cayenne, 4 milliliters of baking powder, 25 milliliters of cold butter, 50 milliliters of milk, 5 milliliters of lemon juice, 100 grams of grated cheddar cheese, 300 grams of sausage meat, and 75 milliliters of finely chopped onion. For the complete recipe, visit David's blog at oldfatguy.ca. It's time to make it, just give it a try, 'cause you can make it like the old fat guy.
Thanks for stopping by for this episode of You Can Make It. I'm David Farrell, the Old Fat Guy. Today I'm going to make a great chicken wing. They're called garlic, honey, mustard chicken wings. And the reason they're so great is they're not really spicy. We all have friends who come over, and I like a good buffalo wing, but you have the ones who are a little heat adverse. This is a really flavorful, delicious wing that anybody can eat. And the best part of them is they're quite easy to make. So we're going to start off by making a glaze for the chicken wings. It's very simple. In this pot, I have 50 milliliters or a quarter of a cup of honey. In this, I have 25 milliliters of soy sauce, or 2 tablespoons, and 25 milliliters or 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. And I'm just going to add them to the honey and make a mess. I'm good at making a mess. So now that we've got them with the honey, there's one more ingredient for our glaze, and that is some finely chopped garlic. I have 10 milliliters or 2 teaspoons of finely chopped garlic. And I'm just going to add that to the liquid mixture. Now I'm going to take this over to the stove and just bring it to a boil. So we'll just give her a little mix up here and then head over to the stove. You'll note the sauce has come to a good rolling boil. That's what we're looking for. And as soon as it does that, just turn the heat off and remove it from the heat. When it comes down, I just want to take about 25 milliliters or a couple tablespoons out of the sauce because I want to be brushing that on the raw chicken. I've preheated my grill to medium-low. You could also cook wings on a smoker at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or in an oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Today I just chose my gas grill. So I'm going to put 12 chicken wing segments on my grill. I just washed these under cold water and patted them dry with a paper towel. It's nice if they have a bit of a dry surface. And once I've got them on the grill, I'm just going to brush this side with half of that 25 milliliters of glaze we put in the cup here. And that's just to start building a layer of the glaze on them. And I'm going to close the lid up and let them cook for 5 to 7 minutes. I'll check them after 5. You just want a nice brown on one side. The chicken's been cooking, I checked it a second ago, but it's actually been cooking close to 7 minutes. So we're just going to give it another quick brush on this side with a little bit of the glaze. Just a real light layer. And then we're going to flip it. And you can see it's got some nice grill marks and some brown color forming, and that's what you're looking for. And one last brush with the glaze, and then it should just take 5 or 6 minutes on the other side to finish it off. There we go, so 5 or 6 minutes more, and the chicken should be cooked. These have cooked for another 5 or 6 minutes, and they're now ready to go in. I will tell you that I stuck an instant read thermometer in them to make sure that the meat temperature in the thickest part was over 165 degrees Fahrenheit, because that's what you want to make sure the meat has got no bacterial growth in it. And we'll just throw these in a bowl, because we're going to go inside and throw some glaze on them. So let's go inside. I brought the wings in from the barbecue, and now we just want to put a final glaze on them. So we have the glaze that we didn't contaminate with the brush. This is just sat in the pot, and we're going to pour that over the chicken wings and just give them a good toss to give them a good coating of the glaze. So we're just going to plate them up. And you have garlic, honey, mustard wings. Of course, we have to give them a taste. So let's give one of these a try. The honey is the big hit, but a nice overlay of garlic and the mustard gives it just a bit of complexity. This is a delicious chicken wing that isn't hot, and you can make it.
In this recipe, David made garlic honey mustard chicken wings. The ingredients used are 12 wing segments, 50 milliliters of honey, 25 milliliters of soy sauce, 25 milliliters of Dijon mustard, and 10 milliliters of minced garlic. For the complete recipe, visit David's blog at oldfatguy.ca. And remember, you can make it. It's time to make it. Just give it a try. 'Cause you can make it like the old fat guy.
I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of You Can Make It. I'm David Farrell. Today I'm going to make a salmon dish called Fancy Smancy Salmon. What makes it fancy smancy? Well, it looks a little bit fancier than your normal salmon dish. If you're like me, you'll go to the supermarket and you'll see that salmon steaks are usually quite a bit cheaper than salmon fillets. But they're kind of a pain to eat. When you cook them, they have bones down the legs and you got to peel the skin off and big backbones up the back of them. With Fancy Smancy Salmon, I'm going to show you a way to cook it that most of the bones come out of it and you just get to eat a nice medallion of really tasty salmon. That's the fancy part. The schmancy part is we're going to put something on top of it called a compound butter. And all a compound butter is butter with other ingredients introduced into it. For my compound butter for my salmon, I have 25 milliliters or 2 tablespoons of cold butter, 5 milliliters or 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 2 milliliters or a half a teaspoon of ground black pepper, and 1 milliliter or a quarter teaspoon of dry mustard. And you just need to put those on top of the butter. And it's a little bit of work because the butter's hard. And you got to slowly mash the butter into the dry ingredients. And you'll just keep working it until the dry ingredients are mixed into that butter. And there you go, we have the compound butter made up. Now, we want to form that into discs. So just form it into one shape, and you want to divide it into about rough thirds. Don't worry about being exact. So we'll just cut it into thirds, and we want to flatten each of those thirds out into a flat shape. It's just going to be sitting and melting on top of the salmon, so don't worry about it looking pretty. Just flatten it out. That's 3 because we're going to have 3 salmon steaks. So we can just put that in the fridge to keep hard while we're doing the preparation to our salmon. I have 3 nicely thick pieces of salmon here. These are wild sockeye, so they're a nice bright pink and they have a wonderful flavor. What we're trying to do is to get these bones out from the inside of there to start with. So just take the salmon and you'll look to see which way. It's a bit easier. They tend to go that way. So just take a sharp knife and work it inside those bones. And then once you've got them worked inside the bones, run your finger down, make sure you didn't miss any. See, I missed one right there. So just get that little fellow out of there. And then you want to make sure you cut all the way up to that bone. So stand it on end and cut it right to that spine bone. And now we're going to do the other side, exactly the same way. And once you get down to that spine bone, you'll see how they're still attached there. We're going to take a pair of kitchen shears and cut them off. So that those bones are off down there. But we want a nice shape too. It's got to look pretty as well as not have any bones. So we're going to cut the skin off one of the legs. And you just start up about even with the bone and slice a sharp knife down under the skin. And then I like to lay it flat and put the knife in and just work it under the meat, just like that. And you'll see the skin just comes off nicely, and take your shears and cut that piece of skin off. Now, to get the nice round shape that you see ended up in there, you start rolling this leg of the salmon in. And the reason you cut the skin off is this piece with the skin on it is going to fold over. And you've got a nice round medallion. But when you're cooking it, it won't want to stay that way. So we're going to take some butcher string, wrap it around the salmon steak, and tie it off so it stays in that shape. And I'm just going to do the third salmon steak the same way. So I've got the salmon nicely tied up, and you've got some choices about how you could cook these. You can cook them for 20 minutes in a 350 degree oven, about 20 minutes in a 350 degree smoker, or over indirect heat on your barbecue. Light one side and cook them on the other side. Whichever's most convenient for you. I like mine with a kiss of smoke, so I'm doing these in my smoker today, as I said, set at 350 degrees. So let's take the salmon and our compound butter out to the smoker and put it on. I've preheated my smoker to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm going to put the salmon on. But there's something about salmon that seems to stick to a grill like nothing else, so I'm in the habit of brushing my salmon with some olive oil before I put it on the grill. It just saves me a lot of grief later. So now that we've got our fancy salmon in the smoker, we're going to put on the Schmancy compound butter, which will melt over it as it cooks. So this just has to sit in the smoker for about 20 minutes. We're going to be looking for an internal temperature of 135 degrees Fahrenheit, which we'll check in 20 minutes. The salmon's cooked for about 20 minutes, and you just want to make sure it's at least 135 degrees. That is well over. So we just need to take the salmon out of the smoker. And we'll take it inside and finish it off. We've brought the salmon inside, and it already looks pretty, but it can be even better. There's a bone, the spinal bone, with some bones sticking out. You just have to run your finger along until you find that little hard bone. And if you just reach in and grab that with a pair of needle nose pliers and just wiggle, you can pull it out with all the bones attached to it. And we'll just do that with each one. There they go. Just make it look pretty again. And so now you have hardly any bones in your fancy schmancy salmon. Now, you don't want string on it. It just looks bad. So take a pair of snips and peel the string off. And there you have some beautiful, fancy schmancy salmon. Of course, you're going to want to taste it. Look at that, a nice piece of salmon, no bones. So moist, so tender. The garlic and the pepper just gives it a little bit of spice, and the butter makes it so rich. This is a fancy schmancy dish, and the best part is you can make it.
In this recipe, David made fancy schmancy salmon steaks. The ingredients are 3 salmon steaks, 5 milliliters of garlic powder, 2 milliliters of pepper, 1 milliliter of dry mustard, 25 milliliters of cold butter, and 15 milliliters of olive oil. For the complete recipe, visit David's blog at oldfatguy.ca. And remember, you can make it.